in the US, we're used to a history of the West anyways that goes back maybe 400 years. But you go back to China, 400 years is like nothing. That's like yesterday. Now I have my little pack of Chinese flashcards right here, so I can go over my flashcards every day. So I'm trying to read the Chinese classics like Three Kingdoms and Outlaws of the Marsh. But one of the things I really like about the Chinese tea is there's so many different flavors and so many different kinds. And there's green tea, there's white teas, there's red teas, there's black teas, there's yellow teas, there's brown teas. So I do love Chinese culture, and that's a big part because we had a Chinese student live with us who was a high school exchange student, and she lived with myself and my wife for 4 years, and her name is Grace Xu, and she was awesome, and she was just such a nice kid. But because of that, I got interested in Chinese culture, particularly food, because Grace really liked to cook Chinese, and I think most people in America think, oh, Chinese people eat a lot of rice, which is true if you're from South. And so when Grace came to live with us, we said, oh, Grace, we figured you like rice. And she said, actually, I like noodles. We're from the North. We like noodles. I'm like, oh, and so it was sort of like a very basic misunderstanding. We visited Grace's family for 2 weeks, and then I spent another week in Hong Kong. Our trip to China was in the summer of 2017. It was a wonderful trip. We were in Beijing, we saw the Great Wall, we saw the Summer Palace. You look at the street of old cobblestones and someone says, yeah, these are 1,000 years old. You're like, wow, that is just amazing, a street that's 1,000 years old. Then we went to Xi'an and we saw the clay soldiers with the wall that surrounds the city, which was just really interesting. And then last of all, we went to Shanghai, which was also fascinating, both because of the big modern buildings along the river, along the Bund, but also because of in the old part of the city, all the little tiny shops, which are these little tiny shops, a very, very cool place. I really enjoyed it. And the food was amazing. We loved the food wherever we went. We were able to taste a lot of different specialties from different parts of the country, which was a lot of fun. And the third thing we liked a lot was the people themselves, who were just so nice and, again, so welcoming. We really enjoyed the people. I drank a lot of coffee growing up. When I went to China, I was mostly just drinking coffee. But when we went there, people would give you gifts of tea as a gift. So I came back, I had a lot of tea, and I'm like, well, I have to start drinking this tea. And I started drinking it, and it just opened up a whole new world for me. The tea was so good, it tasted so wonderful. And I had a lot of it, so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna bring some of this tea into my office so I can share it with students when they come in. What happened was students were like, oh, Professor Matt likes tea. So they started bringing me more tea. So now I have 3 times as much tea as when I started. So my tea collection is growing, not shrinking. I wanted to shrink because I had so much tea, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing. I do remember one of the nicest gifts we got was this tea set, and I love this tea set. It was from Grace's sister. She called her sister, really her cousin, and it was such a nice gift. It was the first night we arrived in China, maybe the second night, and they gave us this set, and I was like, oh, it's so nice. And on the bottom of the cups, it has our names, my wife and myself, Matt and Elaine, inscribed on the cups. It was such a really nice gift, and so I'm really happy that this gift I can share with so many people. I have had hundreds of cups of tea with different people who come in. Everybody who comes in, I offer them tea. I've been teaching at Northeastern for 5 years, and there's a lot of different publications for students, right? There's Huntington News, which is a school newspaper. There's The Scope, which covers issues of social justice. There's Story Bench, which kind of looks under the hood of different kinds of stories and how things got made. But it was early. It was really right after COVID started. We had Yu Tian, who was one of the editors, had gone to school in Wuhan with the epidemic had started, and so she said, I can interview some people who live in Wuhan about what life is like right there now. So I said, great. And so she interviewed people, and we put that online. We did, I think, maybe 3 stories from Wuhan, and they did very, very well. They're the stories that have done the best on Global Observer. in Chinatown, Boston Chinatown, and ask for the more authentic dishes and try something different and branch out, because there's so many flavors in the real food and it just tastes so good. And I think that's a good way to explore another culture anyways, is trying different foods. If they like to read, I tell them to read some of the books. If they like action, they should read Three Kingdoms, or look at some of the movies about the Three Kingdoms. There's a million movies about it. Journey to the West, which is, I have to admit, was maybe the least favorite of the Chinese classics. The Flying Monkeys and stuff was a little crazy. Laws of the Marsh, which is a really interesting books. So yeah, so if you're interested in reading, there's a lot of great Chinese works you can read. Hopefully when COVID dies down, I'll get another chance to go. I'm really looking forward to going again. I want to go for a long time. I'd love to go and study language. Orange tea. It's very, very good.
Yeah.
Cheers.